I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're about to start very shortly. Definitely appreciate you. Please take a moment to press the share button so we can reach as many people as possible during this broadcast. We're going to talk about a very interesting topic, and we want to make sure that as many people get access to this information as possible. So, thank you again. Just press the share button and make sure you press a like, you comment, you engage with us. We're going to be sharing all of the comments, as many of them as possible, and your questions and things of that nature. So, again, thank you for joining our state of emergency. We will see you shortly. How we doing? Once again, we will be starting very shortly as we come into the last 2 minutes of our countdown. So again, please press the share button. If you have any questions related to the topic, please put them in the comment box. We will get to your questions during the showcase, and we will be starting promptly. So thank you again for joining us, and look forward to a great show. Thank you.
Turn up them drums a little bit. Yeah, now we bouncing. I like that. Come on, fellas. Plenty of friends and all the Philly steaks you can eat. Back in school, we used to dream about.
All right. All right. How we doing? How we doing, everyone?
All right.
We tried something a little different today, so I'm glad everybody got to jump in the private chat, guys. You can see the Facebook link. I'm gonna add the YouTube link. We're now on YouTube as well. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining our state of emergency. Somebody has a police background over there. I didn't mean that type of emergency, but okay. But we have. I'm just gonna say who our guests are today. We have Dr. Leroy Gadsden, criminal justice professor, Dr. Dean Phelps, who's in education, Rebecca Lopez, who's also in education. And well, I say Dr. Jean Cook works in college on the college level. Rebecca Lopez, she works with the youth, the K to I think it's kindergarten to second grade in the special ed department. And you have J. Cole Mills, who's educated in school. And we have Reverend Harris from Mount Olivet Baptist Church. Place I have to visit. I haven't been there in a little while. I have to make a run. But before we start talking about the subject, what we're going to talk about, I'll say the emergency tonight. We're going to talk about what is school. What does it look like for the children going back to school? We have a couple of things we're going to touch on. But before we start, we always like to start with our clergy, and our resident clergy is Reverend Harris, and we'd like to start off with a prayer, if you can.
Yes. Lord, we thank you and we give you praise. Thank you for this opportunity to come together with great minds to talk about the issues that are going on in our country, our nation, and in our world. I ask that you would bless this moment of our coming together, that we be able to come together with some resolution as to how we can move this nation forward, how we can move our communities and make them better. I'm also thankful for this opportunity to share with my sisters and my brothers, just to know that we can make a difference one person at a time. And we give your name praise. We give your name glory. We give your name honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. And talking of today, we're going to talk about a issue. Again, we're going to talk about the children going back to school on different levels. And just to get right into it, we're going to start off with the first question, the first topic of the day, which is, are our children safe going back to school amidst the pandemic? Everybody knows that there was an announcement made to send our children back to school. There's a lot of different feelings and emotions in regards to it and how we're going to do it. So the thing is, are they safe going back? And I'll start it off with someone I had an earlier conversation with in regards to that, and she's dealing with the youth on that level. Miss Rebecca Lopez, would you like to tap in and start us off in this conversation? You got to take on mute. Let's see. There we go.
I apologize.
So
each grade level age requires different needs. Their understandings are absolutely different. Being licensed from birth to second grade, it takes on a different role, especially because they're not as independent. They rely solely on the adults around them to provide their safety and security. And in the early stages, we're talking about pre-K and kindergarten, you're looking at the early stages of learning how to interact socially. They know how to interact at home, but how do I behave at school? And you're dealing with parents who are leaving their children for the first time in school environments. So it's a lot to take in. You're adding on the issue of just separation from family. And then you have pandemic on the other hand. How do you keep their safety? And then how do you keep the safety of yourself for your own family? So there's a lot of questions going around and there's really no clarity at this moment. PPE is being offered, but how do you tell a 5-year-old you have to keep a mask on for 6 hours and 20 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
And then even better, how do you tell a 5-year-old they can't leave a room that's literally probably 13 by 12 in space? There's still just too much that is unclear and hasn't been worked out well enough to be able to say, you know what, all hands up, let's go.
Wow, that is interesting. Anyone else want to tap in on that? I know now. I'm thinking she's dealing with the younger crowd. What about the high school and the college? Is it going to be a little bit different?
Well,
we've had several meetings with UFT and meetings with the administration in the school buildings, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be much different. The students are still going to, so it depends on whatever model your school chose to take, because they can choose from 3 different models, but there are models where the kids aren't even in pods. So pods is when the kids don't actually change the cohort. So the teacher comes to the classroom, the same kids go from subject to subject in one classroom, the teachers move out. So they're sort of contained, theoretically. But there are models where the kids aren't. right? And so if you have to have 33% of the kids in your building, let's say your building is 3,000 kids, that's still 1,000 kids. And even teenagers won't keep masks on. I mean, if you walk around outside, and I work with teenagers, I love that group, but they also have this feeling of being, fearless and invincible. And so sometimes when it comes to a disease or a pandemic, while they have the capacity to understand, they don't take it as seriously because they feel like, not me, but maybe it's my grandma or maybe my mom or dad. As far as the DOE, they're not doing any testing. There's no mandatory testing. They're not even doing temperature checks. So we're relying on, you look sick? Let me see. You okay? I mean, that's no way to control a pandemic. We talk about the man in the White House, but the New York City Department of Education is not doing much better. And then these same kids are going on the bus and the train with all of the adults. So there's no way to contain this. Other states and other models typically have a transit system for their schools. So even high school students ride the school bus. That isn't the case for New York City. The vast majority of our kids are on mass transit. And so they're intermixing with us, with adults. Teachers are taking mass transit. There's no way that there's not going to be an uptick in cases when we're in schools. There's just no way to contain it.
Right. I totally agree. You asked about the going up. Let's talk about the college for a minute. I think they're being more cautious when it comes to the college campuses, and Dr. Gadsden can attest to that as well, because we both work in colleges. 95% of our students will still be online. Their classes will be online, 95%. The only students that are going to be allowed on campus right now, the 5% are for our college anyway. I don't know about Dr. Gadsden's. The 5% that are going to be allowed on campus are those who have to have labs in order to get their certificates. And those are mainly medical students, such as, let's say, biology labs and chemistry labs, that they need those particular labs as a part of their degree. And some of them won't even be on campus. They'll be doing those in hospitals or other medical facilities. But 95% of our classes are still going to be online. There are a few other services they're going to provide for the students. And they have to make appointments. Only a certain amount of students are going to be allowed on campus at a time for special things that someone has to see the bursar personally, or financial aid or something like that. But they have to make appointments, and there's going to be a designated area. So I will say they're being a lot more cautious in terms of the safety of the college students, as opposed to what the DOE is doing. Because I really do agree with you. It's looks like New York City is the only major school system that's actually going to be opening up in the United States. So that's not good.
Well, let me, if I could jump in on that for a minute, as Dr. Phelps has pointed out, serving on the national committee looking at this reopening, the colleges, we have, I think, much more control, especially community colleges. The Southern colleges, the big ones, well, what they're doing, they're bringing freshmen in, but you have control, reducing to one person per dorm room, et cetera, et cetera. The college campus seem to be taking this position in line with what all the medical people are saying, that social distancing is the best agent to fight this spread of this virus. When we look at the public schools, and I've sat with some of the administrators, et cetera, and Ms. Lopez brought it out, there's a big problem here from what I can see, that first we have to accept there is no safe way you can bring this many young people back to school. It's impossible. Once you accept that, then you can start moving to the safety precaution and looking at what, and I'm not trying to beat it from the DOE or the mayor, but I've talked to administrators. What is the plan? I mean, what is the basic, full, definite plan of safety of bringing these young people back into the public schools? So 1 week out, 1 week here, they have another plan. They're guaranteeing the PPE agent to help us with. But principal is saying, I have not received it yet. We are less than 3 weeks from the start of school. There should not be any ambiguity exactly of what we are doing in returning these young people to school. And I hope that the administration, they would take this. This can, as we've seen, this is a lethal matter. This is a fatal matter. This is not about, let's be political and how we can save money. If we're going to bring them back, we must practice safety with social distancing and also with the PPE. And my concern is also the civil rights activists, when we start bringing these supplies back, what will happen with the schools in the Black and Hispanic community, poor communities, when
Yes.
we get those supplies? The mayor and they have guaranteed a 30-day supply from day one before September, and there are still over 60% of the principals have not received those supplies, and most of those principals are in the minority community. So it is dangerous. And 2 more minutes. What I have not seen or heard a plan for transportation. In another walk in life, we talk about transportation, all government responsible for the needs of the people. As someone said about New York City School opening back up, NYC schools, our transportation is not handled all by government. We bid out contracts to private contractors. How are we going to guarantee the safety of those young people on that transportation when it goes to private contractors? I have not even seen a plan, and those school buses will become very dangerous. And when it comes to transporting students and transporting this virus, we haven't seen the plan, and we are less than 3 weeks out. You know, become very dangerous. Did I hear? Was that an echo?
A little bit.
Okay, because I was about to leave my apartment. Okay, I'm good now. I'm good. But and I think, you know, because a lot of our parents too, and I'm gonna finish. A lot of these young people come back to homes that's occupied, you know, by grandma, and that's part of our culture, Nana, Big Mama, et cetera, et cetera. With these books and all this stuff, they can easily bring the virus home with them, regardless of their age. That's a major concern with that transportation. That's it.
If I may just chime in on the idea, I don't really know if parents understand the environment that they're subjecting their children to, especially in their early ages. The emotional trauma of dropping a child off, you know, I don't think even myself, as I dropped off my own children, I don't think I actually felt it until I was giving my child in. And to turn in your 5-year-old, your baby, to an individual, you're entrusting that individual. How do you do that from 6 feet away? Yeah. And then watch that they're not able to comfort your child. They're not able to console the pain that that child feels. They think they have because mommy and daddy are walking away.
Right.
And then even more so, you think that they're getting this upscale, top-notch education because they're sitting in front of you and you're able to teach them face to face, but you're doing it from 6 feet away. Any book that you pick up on guided reading, on instruction, on the primary years would tell you, you need that comfort, you need that interaction, you need the close proximity to the child, let alone to be able to teach them the sounds that they're going to make phonetically from their mouths. How do you do that with a face mask on?
Yeah.
Things that people are not understanding. They're going to get to the high school level, but how are they going to get there? They have to learn the fundamentals. How do you learn the fundamentals? By being so far away. Something that, honestly, don't get me wrong, I get the remote learning is not as intense as what we had prior to the pandemic. You know, if I were to take the scale and compare the growth between my children at school when we had prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, during remote learning, obviously there's a great difference. However, it wasn't completely null. There was some growth because there was learning going on. And I don't think enough credit is being given to the teachers that literally every single student, every parent, no matter what time it was that they were working with their child, whether it be at 8 o'clock at night because they had to work all day long, or whether it be at 6 o'clock in the morning because they weren't going to get home with enough time, or mid-afternoon, I was on the phone with them. And many other teachers did the exact same thing to ensure that the quality of education that these kids were getting was quality in comparison to what they are now going to be subjected to.
There's a question. Are there any New York City parent leaders on the panel right now? Anybody that's a parent leader? No.
I'm a parent.
Rev, do you have anything you want to add in there?
Well, there's also a concern for the janitors that will be placed within the schools to keep the cleanliness of the schools as well, because as we can see, New York City, we just learned that the New York City subways were dirty, and we got them cleaned up during the pandemic. People were taking pictures of the subway. Oh, it's clean on here. So we just finding out that we can
Right.
clean a subway. So we have to do the
Mhm.
same thing in the
Mhm.
school. Um, the students need clean environments. Those There are high touch surfaces that need to be wiped down periodically throughout the course of the day. Those handrails, the stairwells, those light switches, all of those things have to be sanitized throughout the course of the day in order to keep the children and the teachers safe. And so we have to make sure that we're asking those questions about the janitorial staff. Are
Yes.
they being increased in the schools? Are we bringing in more Lysol wipes? Are we bringing in Lysol spray, disinfectants? What are we doing to make sure that the cleanliness of the building is being taken care of periodically throughout the course of the day? Because most schools, even I'm a former school teacher myself, the janitors only came in after everybody left. At my school, maybe not at other people's school, but at my school, the janitors came at the end of the day, and by then the
Yeah.
school is filthy. So um, hopefully during the course of those days that the janitors will be able to go throughout those buildings to keep
This
the
is true.
teachers and the
Now I
students safe.
know even with the churches, they have so many regulations now with how they're going to do the cleaning as well. So I know that even just that, and that's a smaller space on how often they want you guys to clean, right?
Exactly. And so we're going through the same thing at the church. Luckily, we've had a FEMA grant come through, and FEMA is providing a temporary grant to clean the church every 6 months. So we had Stanley Steamer come in. We were able to bring our janitorial staff in and have them clean periodic throughout the week and during services. And so that's helped tremendously to keep
That is
everyone safe.
yes, Miss J. Cole.
Jacole, just Jacole.
I
So
have to teach you
the
like
DOE,
a teacher. I have to teach.
like a rapper, right? So the DOE has put out this reopening plan. So it's a pretty lengthy document, but it's a lot of
Yes.
redundancy and sort of like when the time comes, we'll deal with it. And so as it pertains to cleaning, they haven't changed anything. They're still saying that the custodial staff will come in after school to do a disinfecting with a specific, like some
Wow.
type of new age spray. So what happens during the day? And again, those groups of kids were not in pods, so kids were still going back and forth. There's no plan for cleaning within the school day, and the only plan that they have is by putting out more stations for hand washing. And when they say hand washing station, they just mean a little dispenser for
Sanitizer.
Yeah.
the gel and the patties. But still, there's nothing for this right here. And then the kids don't have a lunch period. The kids are eating in the classroom with the teacher, right? And so the plan for that is that the teacher is supposed to instruct students while they're eating. So now they have to take off the mask to eat, right? I'm talking, things are
Mm-hmm.
flying, and all these conversations are happening, and the teacher's still supposed to be instructing at the front of the room. The teacher gets 5 minutes to not instruct during the lunch period, and the recommendation of the DOE to protect the teacher is that he or she stands in the back of the room. That's it. I had an AP, and she meant with the most, the best intention. She said, well, perhaps maybe it might be safer for you to stand in the doorway because you're not permitted to leave the room and leave the kids unattended. But maybe if you're in the doorway of the classroom to the hallway, maybe you'll be more protected. That's the level of PPE and protection that they're willing to provide. There's just so many things as to why this is not a good plan. This is not.
But that actually
Was put into it.
that goes into the second question, the second part of this, because we have a three parts of this, is the rights of the parent and the child. Like going into this, I would like to know like what do the parents get to say in all of this, or the children, and on behalf of their children and things like that. Rebecca, you wanted to say something first?
Yeah, right before we jump into that part, because I do have something to say on that. To jump off of what Ms. Mills was sharing when she's speaking about the sanitary of the bathroom. In our schools, most of the elementary school classrooms actually have the bathrooms inside the classroom. The classroom that I am in has the bathroom right by my teaching station. How sanitary is that going to be? If
Wow.
no one's cleaning it to the end of the day? Or am I expected to then pick it up? Probably what's going to wind up happening.
Wow.
But that's the environment that most teachers will take on, because most teachers are like me. They'll turn around and say, oh, hell no, we can't have a dirty place. We're not going to be eating and breathing in the same room. You know, it's just not there.
You know, and I think if you finish, you are finished. Make sure I don't want to cut across. But I think that's a very dangerous point we're talking about right now, because every training I have been to, all talking about that and the Reverend alluding about even between service, if there's movement, there should be some type of cleaning. That we're doing on the college campus, not on the college campus. Every training we've been to saying whenever you have movement, you should have repeated cleaning with the proper agents, EPA approved agents to clean with. That's the best defense when you have movement, not to after the day. That is very frightening and disturbing, and that's gonna cause a problem. That's going to cause a major problem if we're cleaning after you had all this traffic all day long, moving around. Then in the afternoon, when the school is out, we're going to clean. That's going to pose a serious health hazard. And I hope that the DOE would change that position. And I hope parents who are listening will make sure that's their requirement, that DOE change that. That is very dangerous and that can be fatal. That can be lethal, really, when you do not do that proper cleaning. All the medical people, I don't stop, all the medical staff is saying, all the medical experts are saying the best way to fight this thing beyond social distance is repeatedly sanitizing.
I have to say that the custodians at our school are absolutely excellent. I mean, they come in as often as possible, but how many classrooms can you really keep track of? And priority of the space, because now space is being allocated by bodies. So depending on the square footage is depending on how many people are actually allowed in that room in order to maintain the social distancing. But the priority is being given not even to the teachers or the staff. It's being to the children. And granted, we all would understand that the reason why it's being given to the children is so that this way they can get the most out of the academic school year. However, the staff is what provides that safe environment. The staff is what provides your ability to learn. So if you cut back on us, then what are you doing?
Yeah. There was a question, and I don't know if anyone has to answer this, but someone did ask how many nurses will be available to handle the students. Like, are they gonna up the nursing staff? Because you just talked about staff. So if they're cutting staff, like, how does? Oh,
my favorite question.
I think it's one, isn't it? Right now, they're struggling to get one for each school, because that was not in existence before, which was, when you heard that, it's like astonishing. What do you mean there's not a nurse in every school?
Yeah. Wow. And the bigger point on that is that they left out in elementary schools, because of the populations being so big, you now have annex buildings. And where are those annex buildings located? Are they behind the school? No.
Right. Wow.
Actually, some are even 3 blocks away. And those buildings are not being facilitated with nurses. Those children need to be distantly walked 3 blocks to the main building in order to be able to take their temperature and secure that their safety and their health is not at risk.
This is true. Now, I do want to get to that next question is, knowing that what we know now is, and I know there's different levels, different grade levels have different things. And I want to tack on both the college and the elementary, actually, because I think college is going to be a very different thing, because the kids are 18 and older, right? So they may not know some questions to ask, right? Coming out of that, they're just coming out of high school, they're still young-minded. But as far as the children, are there any basic rights that they have as far as being parents to children? Like, listen, I don't want this, I don't want that. Is there anything that's being said in regards to that, as far as what their choices are in this whole thing? Because I know it's like, you can't force me to bring my kid back to school. And how does that work?
You could opt out. At this point, from what I understand, you could opt out.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, only I believe it's 26%. At the last time I looked, 26% of the parents decided to keep their children home. You've got 74%, 3/4 of the parents, for various reasons, job related, they've got to go to work. Mental health reasons, it's no longer feasible to have 900 people in the house, because some families have a lot of people trying to fight for that one computer at the same time. So all kinds of things come into. We don't know why some parents have opted to go back, but 75%, I was very surprised at the number. 75% of them have opted for their children to go back to school.
And that's interesting. They did a survey. I read about that. They did a survey, and I was curious to wonder who was included in that survey. What areas were they reaching? Because we know that sometimes when they want the right answer, they go to the right areas where they know they're going to get.
Good point. Yes.
My report said more than 75% of we queried our own parents, and more than 75% of the parents wanted to go to remote learning. So I'm wondering how the city's numbers are so vastly different.
So yes, where are they getting those figures from? That's a very good point that you brought up, Preston. It's almost the same as I was looking at one today where they were getting their numbers, where what the governor said was that if our numbers went below a certain point, I believe below 1%, is when he would start reopening up everything. And then the question came up, where did they get those numbers? Because in some districts, the number was up as high as 7%.
Wow.
Some areas it was below 1. So like you said, they're going to skew it, average it out, and come up with a number that they want to come up with. So
not to mention that before school ended, they just all of a sudden stopped counting. Remember how that happened? They were counting the cases, and then all of a sudden it was like, we're no longer counting the cases. There's too many for us to keep track of. Do your best. And that was the guidance we were left with. So it doesn't give you a great deal of faith that things are going to change this time and that they're going to be forthcoming. And the chancellor basically hid information. There were more cases than were reported, and he took his time to report the cases that actually were there. And that's why it took so long for schools to ultimately close. So how do we know that that's not going to happen again this time? Since they have so much more at stake because they were so gun-ho about reopening.
And I also think that a lot of parents are also traumatized. When we went into remote, at least in our area, our parents weren't prepared. They weren't tech savvy. They didn't understand how to get in to programs. On top of that, our children were just being given for the first time email addresses to use. So it was really frustrating. I want to say for at least the first month. And then once we got past that hump of figuring out what to do and how to do it, things started flowing a little bit more, but like you said, there are so many reasons why parents would want their kids back in school. Only I don't think that they realize all the dynamics that go into it. So on the fact that they're offering, yes, you go for 2 days and then one alternate day every other week.
Yeah.
Guess what? If something happens in that classroom or in the classroom next to you, you have the possibility that you won't have stability. They'll shut everything down all over again, and you'll be forced back into remote anyway. So the bigger question to me would be, how can I provide the most stability and the most structure to my child? And the teacher that's being assigned, what work are they really going to assign them? How can I work best with this teacher, even around my own personal schedule? Because teachers are willing to make adjustments to their schedule to meet the needs of their kids. How can I best work out a schedule so that this way I can keep the stability in my home and get the education for my child while keeping them safe, which is the biggest thing of all.
This is true. Did we lose Professor Gasson?
I think so.
I don't see him.
Okay, I guess we go keep going. But now, so you said at this time the parents can elect to basically, that was the answer. They can elect to just take the students out but it can affect their actual learning, their growth and development at the same time. Now, I was going to ask for the college. I was going to ask Dr. Phelps and Professor Gasson, but he's not here. But was on the college level. A lot of times, I remember when I was in college, there were a lot of things that the parents can't get involved in because they're like, well, you can't do it. It's up to them.
It's called FERPA.
Yes. And, but they're also going through a transition, but they may not know the right things to ask and what to bring to their parents. So is there information that's being distributed to them to let them know, like, this is what you can do, cannot do, so they're aware of it? Because I know a lot of times in colleges, they're kind of just, it's whatever, but they might not know, oh, you had this option to do this, Is that
Well, you're correct. There's a law, it's a FERPA law that I'm quite sure most of you know, that we're not allowed to communicate with parents at all. Parents are not allowed to ask us any questions. Without send an SMS notification. That's not me.
That was Professor Gadsden's computer, I believe. I'm not trying to out you. I'm not a telltale.
Oh, is that what it is?
Okay. He just jumped back in.
Okay, Dr. Gadsden.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. That's modern technology. It kicked me out and let me back in.
I got you. So technically, we treat and we're supposed to treat the freshmen at whatever level, whatever age, as adults. You're college students right now. We do have, and I'm quite sure all campuses do, they have programs for parents. We do have parent orientations where we give them certain information, specific information, but it cannot be particularly germane to their child. We can give parents general information. So when it comes to the opening of the schools and whatnot, that generally the parents can get that. It should be publicized on every campus's website, and I believe it is. Every campus I've gone to, they have opening, what the plans are for opening. They have daily updates on what's happening with coronavirus, so that's open to the public. So a lot of what you're asking is really open to the public, the questions the parents have. If it's, but if it's germane to their individual child, no, you can't answer those questions. But in general, you can answer those questions as to what's happening with the campus.
Yes. What we got is she referring is the reopening plan. It's accessible to the public, but you really do not have a choice. The administration, the powers that be, we've served these committees have said we're going to open the colleges up. And I think as she alluded to earlier about if you lab or nursing, then you have to do face-to-face if you wish to get licensed. There's not really a choice in the matter. That's what's going to happen. Now, one thing we're looking at, a problem we're having is that we have not seen the school system that's going to provide the students with PPE. And that's the issue we are fighting because it doesn't make any sense to bring students to campus. So you have to come to campus and do not provide them with emergency in case somebody, we look at the general public, we see people on the street walking around without masks. And so if we do not have enough supply when the students come to campus, that's going to be problematic. So to make it simple, I feel for all the college students, this have changed, just like the young students, this have changed the entire definition of college. So we should make it as pleasant and as conducive as possible. And so we're pushing now to make sure that every campus have PPE for the students. So right now we're looking at the faculty, but the priority is not putting it for the students who have to come in. But back to your other question, there's not a choice. This is what we're doing. You can participate or you can sit it out and wait until this virus is over and try to come back another year. But it's not really a choice. But it's vital what we're doing. It's known.
No choice. Well, someone did say, what if let me see if I can get that. What if the parents are, there's a lot of parents that may be illiterate. I don't know if that's something that they can do as far as for the summer. I just wanted to bring that before I go into our next topic. Is there something to do with some parents that may be illiterate?
Well, let's say this now, if I can jump in on that. I don't know if you're talking about college or either young people, we still have first generation college students, okay? We still have first generation. we still have a tremendous high immigration population. Also, one of the issues we were fighting from day one when they said we would close the schools down is that we wanted to make sure that every child, every student rather, had a laptop in their household. And we fought and we got that, and CUNY joined us with that. We still have young people, we have people, in they're in shelters that's trying to get education.
Right.
That's on the school level, and on the college level, we have people in there. So I think it's incumbent upon all the administration to make sure that we have the support for the parents that have the young people in the school, and for those college students who are trying to master the language and get an education at the same time. We must be supportive of that. They must have. Now, I do like with the college campus, we do have a lot of help out there, and we would tell any parent that have a child in college, seek out the help. Now, I don't know what DOE has for them, but I do know the UFT, the union, have a lot of help and support. And I would advise people to seek out that after school program. Me and the doctor was talking about that earlier this morning, me and Professor Lopez. So their help. What DOE has for the students, I cannot state. I know UFT have help for the parents. I do know the college campus have a lot of training and help for the students. And I would advise parents, so even though they're growing, in students in college, I would advise parents to make sure your adult young person who's in college pursue the help that's available for them that's free.
Yes, right.
On an elementary level, parents who need the point of contact and guidance in order to be able to fill out this paperwork, to be able to make their voices heard, they can contact their schools, they can contact the UFT's parent division, they can contact the Board of Education directly and say, I want to speak to a parent coordinator. I need assistance with X, Y, or Z. And their voices would be heard. And I tell them to be adamant, do not give up.
Right.
Really pursue and demand that you get the help that you need for whatever circumstances it is. Whether it be that you need technology because you just chose to put your children on remote, or whether it be that you just don't know where to go or what to choose or what would be the best student for you and your family. Call your schools. Your schools are open. Their staff are there. That leads to office staff. So pick up the phone, call your parent coordinators, call the people accountant secretaries, call the secretaries that are in the office, and get the answers you need.
That's very true. And I would say it would take a strong man and a strong woman to admit their vulnerability, that I do have some deficiencies. I do have some things and I don't want my children to see my deficiencies. So sometimes parents don't reach out.
That's
so
true.
We as educators often have to extend ourselves to them and know that if there are deficiencies, we can make that difference and fill in that gap for them.
This is true. Anybody else want to tack on it? I'm going to go into the third part of what we're going to talk about, and is the future of education. So what do we expect from the education system going forward, such as dealing with, are we going to be in this virtual world now until, is mental health going to be something that's a concern that they tap on? Or like, what does the education system look like to you going forward? I know this is all opinionated, but a lot of people say things are not going back. And that's almost in every industry, people are saying that things are not going back to the way it was. So, is this virtual learning, half-breed style of learning going to be the future?
Well, some form of it, yes, absolutely, some form of it. Because if you notice, we had started moving towards that anyway.
Right.
Think about it, and we were like there. I remember. I'm laughing because I remember when I got my doctorate. Oh my God, it took me 500 years. Now, I'm a little jealous. Let's be for real. Now you go online and you get like, bam, So, but seriously, we had started doing this already anyway, whether it's at the college level or even at the public school level. My friends who have children that are in public school, a lot of their lessons, they were already doing online. They're communicating with their teachers online. The homework is coming to the home online. So yeah, it had already started. Now this is out there now. And guess what? It's like now it's an everyday 5 day a week thing, whether it's the education or for those of us who are working from home. You know, that the word that people were using was the new normal. I didn't quite get it when they kept saying, "What do you mean new normal? This is just temporary. This is just an emergency situation." It truly is becoming the new normal. Okay, I agree with the teacher there who said about interaction. We know how important social interaction is, so we're not going to lose that 100%. But I don't. We're never going to go back to what we were. Let's be for real, because we had already started moving in that direction. If you think about it, we had already moving in that direction. So we're not going to ever go back to what we were. And now, one quick thing before I forget, when I just spoke with my next door neighbor, who's a registered nurse, but you have already heard all of this. It's coming back with a vengeance in about a month. So this thing about them, thank you, Mr. Rivera Garcia, who agrees with me. but seriously, we're talking about opening up school September 10th, and all I've been hearing all over the news is this is coming back with a vengeance in about another 3 weeks or a month. So is anybody actually seriously, is the DOE actually seriously looking at that? Are they paying attention to the CDC and the experts on saying that there's a resurgence coming? And I believe that's why the other cities have opted back and decided, no, we're not going to open up right now. So I don't understand what New York City problem is. And like I said, we're the only large in the United States who say we're going to open up September 10th.
Well, I think what have happened with New York City, we are motivated by money, just like the President of the United States of America. We're not motivated by the safety and health concerns of the average citizen. We are motivated by money. If you look at our history back to 9/11, remember it was the federal government, the EPC commission, came to New York City on the POW and said it was safe to go back on the POW. And that was 18 years ago. And since then, we have seen numerous firefighters, police officers, EMS. They're dying by the numbers because they listened and said people, they officially told them it was safe to go back on the POW. I see the same thing happening now. We're trying to sell people that I'll say that is safe. This pandemic is still live and present. It's not a joke. I think in the effort of trying to save money, and we made it, even though we're going back, we're trying to go back as cheap as we can. Yes, you're right. The virtual thing is remote learning is where we're going to be at. Howsoever, though, we have to spend the dollars to be able to afford to this remote learning. We can't be trying to pin a pinch. You know, we had every time we have the school closed, you have students at their homes, et cetera, et cetera. We're saving money. Okay. We look at this and I've been following what DOE is doing. And if they're going to do this flip flop, et cetera, half on, half off, you have to hire more teachers. Someone said earlier about custodial staff. You have to hire more custodial staff if we're going to do cleaning. So to do this, though, we have to pay for it. If not, we're going to endanger. And I can say it. We're going to kill people in this new world. We're going to kill people unless we spend the money. Let's spend the money. We can't. We're not going back to where we were at. I think education is going to suffer because some of our students, were just dropped in the midst of this. But it is the new norm. And what it's going to cost us, let's pay the money. Let's pay the money. Let's make this a priority. Safety and education, they should be a priority, going side by side or working together.
And Dr. Gaston, I would also say that due to the creative work of Governor Cuomo, many of our parents got a false sense of security that this virus is over because of the low numbers. And everyone feels that it's safe to go back to normal, to do what we've been doing because we don't have the high number of death rates that were going on before. So people say, oh, well, it's safe for the kids to go back to school. People are not dying like they used to. So we have this false sense of hope right now and not really looking at the numbers as we see even with our major league baseball teams and other major league sports teams that are catching the virus even while they're playing exhibition games. So we're not even looking at that. The major league teams are even catching the virus while they're being in quarantine. They're in a bubble, but they're yet catching the virus. So if they're catching a virus in a bubble, imagine what it's going to be when our kids get back into school and they're not in a bubble. They're getting on buses. They're getting on trains. They're getting in Uber. They're getting in Lyft. They're going to the local corner store. So to come in contact with that many people during the course of your day and to take something back home is very prevalent, you know. And so we have to take all of that into consideration.
To add to that, our kids have been away from each other for so long. So when they come back, it's going to be a natural thing for them to want to congregate. It's going to be very difficult for us to prevent that.
Absolutely.
What Dr. Gadsden was saying, who is teaching the remote kids? Because the DOE and the UFT have not come to a consensus about who is teaching the children remotely while actual instruction, face-to-face instruction is going on. So, you know, we talk about the mental health and we talk about whether or not this is going to be a better model. I've even heard some scuttlebutt about teachers being hired from out of state or maybe people who aren't adequately licensed coming in and teaching those kids remotely. So are we really providing a better model? Are we really providing a better level of education by going in and doing this? Wow. You know, who, at this stage, we're 2.5 weeks out and we don't know who's teaching the kids remotely. That sounds crazy. And so, you know, who's providing the counseling? So if I'm only seeing 33% of my kids, I'm counseling that 33%. Who's doing the other 2/3? And we talk about the mental health of the students. The school day is not going to be what it was or what they expect. They're going to have to be in the same space wearing a mask for over 6 hours. They're eating lunch 6 feet apart from one another in their classroom. So there's not that downtime that we traditionally have for students to go out and have a recess or a lunch period, even a free period. In high school, everybody's accustomed to having a free period, right? Well, there aren't going to be any free periods. You're going to be mandated to stay in the school building. My school in particular, which is rare, is actually an open campus. So students are able to leave the building during their lunch periods and during their free periods. Let's say their classes don't begin until 9 o'clock. They come in at 9 o'clock. Well, that's no longer going to be the case. Everybody comes in at 8 o'clock and they stay until 2:30. That's it. So when we talk about how it's going to impact them mentally, this is a whole culture shift for them. Yes. Perhaps it might be better to stay at home. And I think this message is not transparent. It's not being shared with parents. So parents are kind of under this false impression that they're sending their son or daughter back to school and it's going to be the same way that it was February. And it's not. It's going to be so drastically different, compounded with the risk of actually catching the disease and bringing it back to others. And I think you're right. I think it goes back to de Blasio and Cuomo in terms of making that information public. And I think it's deliberately not being brought to the public because they have an agenda to move forward with the opening of schools for whatever reason. I'm sure.
That was, I guess everybody said okay on that one. They left them on that one. Now, the one thing I will ask is something that was asked earlier. You know, going forward, we're talking about going forward. As far as the schooling and the ventilation and things of that nature, is that something that they're looking at towards the future? Is that like, I mean, I can't see you rebuilding a lot of these schools. You're not going to be rebuilding hundreds of schools all throughout New York City. So I don't know, imagine how they're going to deal with the ventilation system because they said that was an issue. Is that something that they've talked about at any point? No.
Well, now the older schools, you have the older schools, that's going to be a problem. The older schools, because you cannot even get, all they have now is the windows. You can try to add to the system as they're doing at the Mount Olivet Baptist Church, where I'm a member at. But if you want to serve in safety, you can worship in safety. But nevertheless, a lot of our schools are older schools. And there's just no design for the older schools to put in that new ventilation system. It's not in the older schools in New York City. It's just impossible, impractical. It's not going to happen.
Well, I hate to say this, but I know I was reading somewhere where de Blasio said, "Well, we'll open the windows."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're right. Once again, you have government not listening to the medical experts. You know, once again, you have decisions not based on medical determination.
Right, exactly.
Right. We're also talking about windows that are barred and do not open more than a crack.
Yeah.
Right. That was kind of what I was saying. Like the windows, I remember being in elementary school, the window only went like this high. And then you had the big fan. You might have a fan. You know, it was just. In my mind, I'm just thinking like how the person was asking that question. I was thinking, yeah, I wonder how they would get to that because that's almost impossible. But then again, if they're reducing the size of classes, well, hopefully they're hiring more teachers instead of this. idea, long term.
I think the thing is when they're reducing the size of the classes, that's why they're saying that the students are going to be coming just a few days a week. So that's their answer to the reducing size of the classes. So you'll come 2 days this week and 1 day next week. And I mean, I'm confused just hearing it.
Right.
Oh, it's Monday. Where am I supposed to be? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, it's crazy, but they're not going to hire more teachers. What they're going to do is they're reducing the size of the classroom, but you only have to come half the time.
Okay. And you see, what's that going to have to do if the city move forward with doing that? We're talking that alternate days of attendance. You have to be considerate of those parents who have a 9 to 5, and they don't have the option of saying, I'm going to work this week. I'm not going to work next week. So we have to make sure those days they're not coming. We have to have something for those children. Where can they take their children to? That's another problem in New York City. And I go back to what it's going to cost us to do this. It's going to cost us if we're going to make it work.
Well, it's going to be hard because we are in a deficit. So he's talking about money that they're trying to say is not there. I think they said we're in a $15 billion deficit, and that was last month. So I don't know how far we are as of this month, because I don't see any tourism coming to New York City anytime soon.
Well, I know where you can get some money from, Mr. Preston. I think there was an $8 million mental health program and plan that we've not seen coming to fruition. I got $8 million for you.
It says, I was trying to read some of the things, but all right. So, I mean, when we're looking at it basically is really going to be, in my mind, what I'm seeing is the schools may close back down right away anyway, the way everybody's looking at it, because what you said, Dr. Phelps, somebody saying, and that's probably the expectation based on the fact that they're going to have you're talking about 700,000 students coming in. That's what they said about the number of students who are coming in together. So it may be closing down, but they will probably try to have to figure something out down the line. But if so, it's just going to be, it's going to be a lot of new resources necessary to make this thing work.
Yeah.
And then we have to talk about what we're doing with the Department of Youth and Community Development and our after school programs as well, to help supplement the time that students are sitting at home, because you don't want young kids sitting at home by themselves, because that could lead to some alternative things happening that could put them in danger. So we have to talk about, if they're on a hybrid model, what are we doing as far as the after school programs and other programs that can keep the youth involved and engaged during the course of the day, so that they don't get involved in risky behaviors.
Now, I have a question. The students now, are they not outside, kind of like they're mingling? Because I see a lot of the kids, they're in the parks, during the day. When I pass by the park, so I do see them. So is there a way? This is my thing. My question is: the way to, when you got kids coming, like when you come back from after school, from summer school, let's say summertime, what we call summer vacation. I haven't been in school for a while, so I forget the terminology. But summer vacation, you come back from summer vacation. My question is, how do you? It's been so long. Usually, summer vacation, it takes a while for the students to kind of get back acclimated to the program. You're coming from March, April, May, June, July. March, April, May, June, July, August, September. That's about 7 months. Not having somebody strict on top of you. Do you think it's going to take longer to actually get them back acclimated to, like, keeping them calm? Because like I said, they outside. They've been having the freedom to roam. Their time in school, because I can imagine they only doing so many hours in school, and then they're out with the friends. They're trying to, a lot of times we had an issue where they had to take the hoops down in the courts because they were hanging out. So
I remember.
Is that going to be a major issue? Is that something that they've talked about?
I haven't.
Do you think it'll take them a while to get back used to sitting in a seat for a certain amount of time?
Well, I have not heard anything that's been a priority about what you're saying to make them comply with the new rules. I have not seen a lot of emphasis placed on that.
I think they're just expecting children to just conform immediately. And that's not the way, at least from my experience, that things have flown. It takes a lot of adjustment and a lot of patience, to say the least. A lot of patience and cooperation. And there have been several times where I've called parents in, and I've lost a valuable component now because of COVID. Going back to school, the ability to call a parent and tell a parent in the very first stages of school, I need you to come in. I need you to sit with your child. I need your child to see that we're a team, so that this way they can trust me and understand that teachers are a part of their well-being. And that's not going to be the case anymore. I lost that. To have even a parent conference or a meeting to discuss the child's progress or concern, I'm being told I have to call. And they're not allowed up. And when they even go pick up their children from the nurse's station, they're going to be escorted up by security. Walked back out. I don't even think parents understand how much of a traumatic experience that is. As a child, I'm sitting here, I'm sick, I'm in the nurse's office, I want my mommy. But my mommy has to wait until the school security comes back from wherever they are to escort them up, because they're not allowed in the building. I don't know how they're factoring that in.
I don't know. That's very interesting. That graphic that you put in my mind is that image is because you're talking about you're putting them around authority at such a young age, that young age, to have them being escorted by security. That's a very interesting thing. That now going into that, are there going to be penalties for them not wearing their mask and things of that nature? Are they going to get expelled for that and stuff like that?
No. So what I understand is if a child refuses to wear the mask, then they're just going to be automatically moved to remote. So I guess that is the consequence, and the parents have to kind of figure out childcare in terms of them going to remote. That's the only solution I've heard to kids not wearing masks. But in my opinion, that's not even a viable solution, because they're all going to take their masks off at some point in time. Because it's human to do so. I mean, even adults who know that there's a pandemic, sometimes, well, not me being a little anal, but I definitely see people wearing the mask here, so the mouth is covered, but the nose isn't, or it's hanging from one ear. So kids are going to do this. We can't send them all to remote. We can't suspend them. There's so many different variables that come into play with this model that just don't make sense. Like, there's so little about it that does make sense. I feel like I'm in a twilight zone when I talk about it, because it's just crazy.
This is so.
Do you all hear the ice cream truck?
I hear it. It's not me. I can tell you that.
It's not my house.
I'm so sorry, everybody. It sounds like Mr. Softy has stopped right in front of my house.
The board of ed sent them. That's for sure. All right, we got something for you. Let's go. We're gonna cancel that. There was that was a little earlier ago. But okay, that kind of threw me off a little bit. I want to take this time to ask people if anybody wanted to, as we get to close out, is there anybody that wanted to add anything into what we discussed?
I mean,
I would.
Okay.
I would advise everyone that listening, if you got parents or godchildren in school, parents, the parents really should make sure they have a meeting, whether it be conference call or something, because parents have the authority in this. And far so often, and we work out here, and parents think that they are helpless. Parents need their school, the school that your children go to. Give us some more parents and find out what are the plans. Ask the principal the first question: do you have the PPE? That's the first question. And the second question is, what is the plan for transportation? We have not seen any plans for transportation. It might be in the DOE reopening. I didn't see it. And that's very dangerous. When national recommendation guidelines, it should be no more than 50% capacity being transported for any type of passenger transport. The maximum number is 50% capacity. So we would advise any parent or parents to make sure, do not send your child to this incubator, as someone talked about earlier. You should be calling your principal tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Calling, and someone said the DOE, call and say, what is the plan for my school? I'm not asking about the entire city. I'm asking about my school, especially if you're in our minority, low-income communities. You definitely should be on the phone, because 9 out of 10 times, your school is going to be on the last of the list, and your supplies will come September the 31st, 3 weeks after we open up. Get on the phone, ask some questions, see what's going to happen with your child's life when they go to school.
I 100% agree with you, Dr. Gadsden,
Mhm.
because a lot of parents have opted to send their children back to school. And one of the first questions that you asked, Preston, was, what are the parents' rights? And that is their right to decide whether or not their child goes back to school. But as Dr. Gadsden says, that's your decision, but check the school out. Try to check out and find out what exactly is the plan. Does your particular school have a nurse? Because now you know that not all the schools have nurses. Or as the other panelist said, in some schools they have annexes. So if a child gets sick, they got to walk 3 or 4 blocks to get to the annex. Check and see if your school falls into that category. It is your right to send your child back to school, but it's also your responsibility to make sure that you take care of it and do it on a responsible level, and check with the school to make sure what their arrangements are for your child so that you feel comfortable about your child going back.
And I agree with you also that as we moving towards the second wave, that we should also look at delaying to see how severe it is before we go back sending our kids into the schools, so that we can make sure that we're sending them into a safe environment. Because one of the issues that we have to really talk about is we had teachers that died from this virus in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom. So
Mm-hmm.
that must be said. And, I know it's important for parents to go back to work, but we also have to lift up that teachers are not glorified babysitters. Teachers are teachers. They're there to help students. They're help to help the parents. They help to build our communities and make them better. And so just because you just want somebody to watch your children, that's not the answer to what you are sending your child to school. You're sending your child to school to get an education. And so you can't get an education if you're not in a healthy environment. So we all have to put all of these variables in place before we just throw all of the children and the teachers and everyone back in the schools.
It was a question about what you just something similar to what you were discussing. On actually, let me scroll it up. I'm gonna find it real quick. I thought it was interesting. So the person asked, so what do I do when my kid is home on her off day? What do I do when they're off on their? What do they? Well, that kind of question is kind of off. What do parents? What do families doing like that actually have to go to work, but
Well,
they may be going to school 2 days a week, and finance is not always there to carry for no baby for a babysitter,
well,
or have the proper care to watch your child. And I mean, a lot of these companies, if we're doing social distancing, I can't imagine they're gonna allow you to bring your child to work like they used to before. It's kind of like, well, they're limiting their amount of people coming in their office as well, right?
Well, that what I was talking about earlier, Preston.
Mm.
Well, this is where the mayor will have to incorporate in the reopening plan. If you have that system that she's talking about, and I think Dr. Phelps about earlier too, you have 2 days on and 3 days off. Well, a lot of our community have to go to work, and you cannot go to a job. You say, well, I won't be here for the next 3 days, or I will be out next week, come back the following week. They tell you do not come back. So I think when you look at this reopening process, if it's going to be really meaningful and effective, you have to have a program that will what you could do with those students when the days they're not in school. that has to be paid for. And I think to have an effective reopening program, then the mayor will have to institute that we have something to do with those students in their days off. We have to occupy their time so parents can go to work who do not have the option of staying home by choice.
I was corrected on the question. So she was, I believe she's an educator, and she was saying if I was working and my kid had to be home and I had to, she's teaching. So I guess she's coming from the opposite end. As far as the teachers do have children as well, like Rebecca was saying, she has a child she has to worry about.
There's no provision.
Yeah.
There's no provision. I'm sorry. There's no provision for that. That's not a concern of the DOE. Like, there's also people who may not have. So you were able, if you work for the DOE, you were able to request an accommodation for a health reason, right? I happen to have a health reason. I requested an accommodation. They denied me today, in fact, and said that my doctor wasn't specific enough in saying how bad my disease was. Okay, so even if you have a disease, right, you still got to come in. You bring yourself in, you're sick, doesn't matter. Even if you have, say that you're a caregiver. So my grandmother's 89. I don't want to bring her COVID, right? Because that could be deadly. It doesn't matter if you have a sick child, if you have a sick person that you're caring for, you still have to report. And all of the teachers are still coming in contact with all of the kids. So the kids may not come in contact with the entire student population, but all of the teachers, all of the staff are coming in contact with each one of them because they're there the 5 days. So the DOE is not at all taking into account teachers who are also parents, but it's a smoke and mirrors thing because the mayor is touting this like, well, the reason why we're opening schools is because parents are demanding that they are able to go back to work, and so we have to open schools. But you're not allowing parents to go back to work if the kids are only there 2 days a week. Parents are still having to find some type of gap for when their children are doing remote learning. So they're not being transparent. They're not being open. And I think the majority of parents who said, yes, I want schools to be open again, are not understanding that 3 days out of that week, and for some schools it's 4, I still have to find childcare. Because if that's the case, why would I risk my child's life? The benefit doesn't seem to pay off.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it doesn't. I'm not going to vote. 3 kids and a sister that I care for that has COPD and cerebral palsy. I couldn't even apply for the accommodation to go remote. I am, no matter what, going to return to work. And at the moment, I find myself prepping my home to isolate myself at any given point.
Oh. Did you disappear, Rebecca?
Oh, hello.
Oh, you just stopped. I thought you. I thought you just like you it went off. But now you was telling it was very interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear about that about your sister.
That's the reality. I mean, Ms. Mills hit it right on the nose. We are put in a position where the mayor has basically told us, screw whatever the hell you have going on. You are going back to work. Because these people need babysitters. Because we've already said it, whether you're remote or whether you're in class, school is not the same. All hands down.
That is true.
Pick your evil.
It's not going to be the same. I don't think any industry is going to be the same. There's so many things that have changed, but I definitely appreciate everybody's information. What the scariest thing that I've heard today is, believe it or not, is the fact that there was no checking on people having the coronavirus. Like, they're not even allowing you to check if they have a fever. I think that's just interesting that, you're allowing people to come back into school and there's no real way of testing. Like, you could really, if there was a testing way, I mean, even the NBA, they had to put everybody in a bubble to continue their season, right? So it's like, it's impossible to do that. And it's, at least test the children a week or 2 weeks out before they, get in there and make sure they have limited contact with the outside. I don't know, something they could do, but just to allow them to come in and there's no real physical testing, I just think that's
it's not impossible. They choose not to do it. It's not impossible. Other states are taking temperature scans. This is New York City saying we don't want to do it. It's not impossible. Like Dr. Phelps said, on the college level, they're doing this. I just took my sister to college, which was a challenge in itself, but it went much more smoothly than I expected. And and they did it from checkpoint to checkpoint. So if they can do it at the collegiate level, why can't we do weekly testing or even monthly testing? There's no testing happening, and not even temperature scans. It's not even a discussion. They're saying, we would like you to do it. And even if you do it, who's it being reported to? Who's keeping track of those cases? No one, because they don't want to know. If they know, then they're accountable.
Does that mean if a child, I'm not mean to cut you, does that mean if a child has coronavirus, let's say they test positive, there's a situation where they had to go to the doctor, they test positive, that they would just continue, the school would just continue as if nothing happened, because they're basically not going to shut down the school because of that, right? Or are they going to shut down the whole school?
So for one, no. So their guidelines say that 2 children have to have a positive test. And if 2 children have a positive test and they close the classroom that the kids were in, if the 2 children have a positive test that was unrelated, so the 2 kids were unrelated, then they'll close the school for 14 days.
Okay.
And if it's more than 2 children, then et cetera, but only for 14 days, and then they start this process all over again. But who is telling? So there's plenty of parents who are not necessarily going to say, my kid has corona. They're just not going to send the kid to school. And it's only there for 2 days anyway, right? So they may only miss 2 weeks of, or 4 days of instruction, right? Because 2 weeks is now 4 days of instruction. But they never mentioned that the reason why Johnny was sent home was because he had corona. So now Johnny was exposed to the 34 kids in the classroom. We're cutting that number down. Let's say he was exposed to 15 other kids, plus the teacher. Let's say the teacher teaches 3 different classes. You see how that number just grows exponentially? He saw the counselor, he saw the nurse, he saw this one, he saw that one. And it's just spreading. And all we have is a mask. That's it. And some hand gel.
And don't forget that we're verging on flu season as well as coronavirus. So with the 2 merging together, it's almost nearly impossible because the symptoms are the same in both. So that's a major issue.
Well, nurses in the building are not even allowed to service or aid teachers. If you do have a nurse, they can only care for the student. And if the parent actually gave permission for them to care for the student. Teachers, you're on your own. You don't feel well? We're understaffed. Who's going to cover your class? You got to finish that day and then go get checked. If you got the time. Oh, and if you can find a place that's open that would take you in time. Because don't call out. Don't do it. We don't have staff.
Wow. True.
This is gonna be a hard comeback. I think. I mean, for me, it doesn't feel like it's gonna. There's something have to give at the end of the day. Even you have some states that are very conservative states that have some of the. I mean, people are still scared to go back, but they have ways. You know, they're separating the students and things of nature, not just giving them just masks. So it's something that something has to give at some point. This doesn't sound like it's going to be the most effective way to go back to school for any of these kids or young adults, you know? So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I really appreciated this conversation. I hope that we find out more information as it gets closer. I know there's really not much we can do. Maybe we can get the parents active to make their comments and say what they feel, because I truly believe that the numbers that, you know, I'm not going to talk about who said the numbers, but saying that 7 out of 10 people said they want their kids to go back to school. I think from most of the people on my Facebook timeline, I see a lot of people complaining about having to take their kids back to school. So it's just a weird thing that for them to say, oh yeah, 7 out of 10, you know, maybe 7 out of 10 in Florida or something like that. But definitely doesn't sound like New York. It doesn't feel like New York, right? So
you know what though? If I can add 2 other things to what you're saying, you talk about the parents and the power. Listen, this is man-made decision to go back. What UFT, the union, is pushing to delay it till they can have a concrete plan. I would say parents are really concerned, and teachers too. Teachers are really UFT. Parents should get behind that and push for a delay. This plan, of all the issues that we talked about today, is frightening in New York City that we do not have a concrete plan, and those issues that some of our colleagues have brought up have fallen by the wayside. Parents, not only parents, we are a community, everybody should put pressure on the elected official and say, look, we're not ready to send these to all our children and these teachers and staff, all our people. We should be able to call our elected officials, Call them up and say, look, we're not satisfied. We're not ready to go back. Tell the DOE we're not ready to go back. Don't force UFT to go on a strike. We're not ready. And we control the calendar. Only when we're going back on the 10th is because DOE said we're going back on the 10th. Move it back for 2 or 3 weeks. Sit down and have some concrete plans. I'm happy the college came down. And they sat down and they came with concrete plans. If this is how we're going to cross the T and dot the I. It's obvious what we've heard today. We're not ready to open schools up on September 10th. We're not ready. So everybody should get involved. Make those phone calls. Push the opening deadline back till we get a real plan.
Who would they call?
What's that?
Who would they call? Like, what is it? You're not calling 311 to complain. So
you should call your city council person, the person you elect and pay that nice salary to make governmental decisions on your behalf. You should call your city council person and say, look, there's a city governmental agency called New York City DOE is forcing my child back, or my friend, my colleague, my staff back into a dangerous situation, and I don't support that. I need you to step up and say no. Call your city council person. Make your issues and your concerns known.
What Dr. Lever is saying is actually very, very true. In counties in Southern Westchester, they've already done it. They've contacted parents and told them that they're not starting early, that they're starting more towards the end of September or even October, that school will start, but it's going to start remotely. That's because they know that they're not ready.
And that's in Westchester, right?
Yeah, so it's not impossible. It can be done. It's just parents need to step up.
Yeah.
They need to stand behind this, and it needs to be a community effort.
The parents, please make the calls. If you have parents, tell them to reach out to the right authorities, the right people, city council. You have a state legislation. I believe Como's pushing it too. So you have state legislation as well that maybe they can reach out to and say their constituents do not want their children going back to school at this time. Maybe a few calls may make a difference. It may make the big difference of pushing it back, because I believe it takes time. It's going to take some time to get it right, and hopefully we'll get there. You're the educators. You've told us we're not ready. So I'm going with what the educators are saying. And again, I want to say thank you. Anybody else have anything to say as we close out? We got about a few seconds left before we close out. I want to thank everybody for joining in today. It was great conversation, and it exposed a whole system that we definitely were not ready. Like, from me seeing it, it was so basic level, but you guys were able to detail the ins and outs to really explain why we really are not ready to go back. And hopefully everybody on this panel, if you do go back, please stay safe. Put your health before anything. Your health is more important. Your value to this world is more important than sacrificing for one day of work when you could be at home taking care of yourself and your health. So please stay safe, and thank you again for tuning in, for joining us today. All right. Everybody else out there, thank you for joining us. Please take a second to look at these are our sponsors for today. So Legacy First, Facebook. Please go to SEQ Legal and join that on Facebook, SEQ Legal Economic Leadership Council. We definitely appreciate everybody for joining us today. Thank you. Please keep sharing, keep joining us. Follow the page so we can keep growing and keep giving you this information. Again, thank you again. Have a great evening.